Yes,
Okay,
actually. I was supposed to have a red carpet, but in the trumpets, but you guys let us down.
That's all I got.
Hold on. I think I can have. Do I have a rim shot for
That
him?
said, oh, okay.
Okay, I got a rim shot for Jesse.
Yeah. Thank you. Feel better.
My buddies, a couple of houses along the Tide River in Arrington, they were very excited to hear that you were coming on the show. My friend Shannon very much shares your ideology, and he has said multiple times, including this morning, Jesse Rutherford is exactly what Nelson County needs. So you get props.
That's a scary thought.
I know, right?
I'm sorry, did I say that out loud?
Never met the guy. No.
Was that my outside voice? Inside voice, outside voice?
Keith Smith and
Terrifying.
Jesse are tight friends, and as a result, they kid because they care. You'll hear a lot of zingers today on the show. This is probably a good time for you to zing Keith before the cameras go on over there, Jesse, if you'd like to. Or we could wait till the cameras go on for you to zing your
Well, you know,
friend over
Keith
here.
has a really nice outfit on today. Honestly, he looks gorgeous. He's really pulling a Mary Poppins
I mean,
look.
do they use the word outfit?
Outfit?
Nelson County?
You got a real cute look.
Keith.
Oh, sorry, man.
You do business in Nelson,
I do
too,
business in
Keith.
Nelson County.
Okay.
Thank you for keeping me straight.
John Blair, hello,
roll
my
this back.
friend.
Can we like delete that whole
It's too
thing?
late. We're
That's
in
why
the
when
digital
Scott
world.
on Wednesday was knocking the lake, I'm like, Scott. Braden Scott. Scotty Mo. All right.
Well, you know what happens here? Everybody gets, what you see is what you get, right?
Right.
That's the beautiful thing about
That
it.
is the beautiful thing. So we'll have some fun, guys. We got John Blair watching in Stanton. John Blair, we love you. I would love to host you anytime you want on the show, John Blair. Keith Smith has put together, is it Coffee with the Candidates?
No,
I mean, he's not a candidate.
no.
He's in office.
It's coffee with ...
Oh,
right?
coffee with ...
So
Where's
in this
my
case,
coffee?
pardon?
You missed half of that.
Yeah, well, you had something else, so that made up for that.
Okay, fine.
Coffee with or whatever. We're going down a rabbit hole.
Ice and water.
Bill McChesney's watching the program. We got a local newspaper on the feed right now watching the show. Give it a like, give it a share, and we'll have some fun, guys, on the Friday edition of Real Talk, which is often quite lively, I would say.
I love the Friday. I love
Me too.
all our shows, but
Fridays are
Fridays
are
are
a
the
little bit
best.
more. Mondays are kind of we start the week. Fridays like okay, weekend's going, but
You won't see me on Mondays.
really,
That's where crisis aversion day is.
Oh, God,
Constantly.
Mondays
I
are
get
when
it.
I put out our fires.
yeah, I get it.
I think Keith probably knows
I get it.
that as well.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yep.
My day's actually Sunday because everybody's panicking about Monday.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I feel
Sunday's
that.
your fire
That's
day?
fair.
Yeah, right.
Mine's
My-
Monday between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m.
No, my
constant
phone
fires.
starts ringing about midday, noon.
Yeah.
On the panics for that.
So give it a like and a share. Judah Wickhauer, I think we're ready to roll. I see a TV station and a newspaper watching the show, a hell of a lot of people in Nelson County watching the program, and my friend, we're in your hands.
I'm trying to remember. I'm quiet.
Good Friday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us. Live in our downtown Charlottesville studio in the Macklin Building, a show presented by Yes Realty Partners, Keith and Jonas Smith's company. Not only is Keith a broadcaster and a Cape Crusader fighting for housing affordability, but guess what? He's also a realtor.
Yeah, who knew?
Who knew?
Really? I thought you did this for fun.
Keith helps people buy and sell homes.
Who knew?
Are we talking about homes today?
So if you need to buy or sell a house, please call Keith Smith. I think it was important for us to start emphasizing the fact that he is a realtor. He is a realtor. Judah Wickhauer is our director. Judah, why don't you go to the studio camera,
My
the
broker's
three-shot
kinda-
you get to pick today, Judah Wickhauer. And you will see the esteemed Jesse Rutherford in the mix. Gentlemen, good morning. Oh, crystal ball came out.
Crystal ball.
I think the first thing we should acknowledge the fact is Keith is wearing a cape, Jesse.
Yes, it's a really great outfit. If you could
outfit.
yeah. Could you describe the it
So
for
I
us?
have a cape on
And the belt.
belt.
my housing affordability utility belt.
Neil Williamson, are you watching?
We are
You have
going
inspired this, Neil Williamson.
This was all his fault.
I know.
We are going to fight for the fight of housing affordability. So there you go. I got my cape on. on. It could be something about the award I won, but who knows?
And then he's got a crystal ball in the shot.
I
Jesse,
got crystal balls.
Should
We
you
both
wave the
got
wand?
one.
Yeah, both got one.
Is that what they did in the Wizard of Oz? I don't remember.
I have no idea.
Oh
All I
God.
can say is, you need a Bob the Builder outfit at this point, Jerry.
I do,
And then
I do.
when we start talking about housing developments, you could say, yes, we can.
Yes, in my backyard. Yes, in my backyard.
Well, that's a real thing.
Yimbies.
Yimbies.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
oh,
So-
Big on the West Coast. I hadn't seen any of that out here.
Yeah, it's very big in the West. But let's kick
Sure.
off with introduce yourself to the 6 people who don't know you.
Who am I?
I
don't
and
know.
what you do. And
Well, I appreciate the honorable mention that you had there. I don't really get that every day.
I think I said esteemed.
Esteemed.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
is that what you do with vegetables?
I don't know. I steam them normally. Steam my vegetables, but
That was good.
that was very sweet of you. Appreciate it. Don't get that every day. But Jesse Rutherford, Board of Supervisor, Nelson County, born and raised. Only place I know. I'll die there. So that's pretty much the story.
I love it.
So
I love it.
let's get this out on the table
I respect this man tremendously, guys.
and over with already. Let's talk internet.
So, as a matter of fact, yes, let's do it because I got a wonderful update from
Yeah.
Firefly
There you go.
on how quick we're going to be getting it, and I think they have close to 5,000 people hooked up to Firefly or something of that. It might be 4,000. I have to double check the number, but large number. And please cue in the chat that you haven't gotten it so that I can then forward that to Firefly and say, get these people their internet. But they have, by and large, been doing a lot of the infrastructure build out. A lot of people are seeing them on their homes and on their poles outside their house, and we're just a matter of time of the install and lighting that sucker up. So we're in, and it is, you talk about changing a culture. Like, I remember on the show when we talked about universal internet connection,
Sure.
and I said, I don't know what it looks like, but it's going to change a lot. Holy cow, has it changed a lot.
So tell me how.
Well, I think, especially in the rural context of Nelson County, right? Because obviously there's other counties getting fiber internet, like Fluvanna, Louisa,
Fluvanna.
some of these other ones. Nelson's pretty much better in every regard, though. We have better views. I mean, I could go on.
You don't disappoint.
I don't.
that's why we love
Nelson doesn't disappoint, really. But when you look at where people are looking in the housing market, right?
Yeah.
We always joke about, like, hey, a house that comes available in Nelson County is competitive to anybody who serves the urban ring. That's a fact, right? If you work in a job in the urban ring of Charlottesville, well, you can live in Nelson, Greene, Madison, even Stanton in Augusta County, and either way.
He says, please say Fluvanna.
Do you have something to say?
He wants to
Fluvanna.
say
You missed
Fluvanna.
Who are you? Oh, sorry.
He's very proud of Fluvanna.
Cape Crusader, just so that you know.
We have a Fluvanna County watching as well, and Maggie Gunnels
There you
watching the
go.
program.
There we
She's
go.
giving
Thank you,
guys some
Maggie.
props.
Come on, Maggie,
Josiah
chime in.
Leonard is saying, where's your tool belt and cape as well, Jesse?
I'm really upset I didn't bring it. Actually.
Well,
it would be overalls and a tool belt. That'd be more fitting. But I'll bring my hard hat and all that next time. Don't worry.
You should do that, actually.
I actually should do that. I don't wear hard hats. Oh wait, I do wear hard hats on job sites. Don't worry. But anyways,
You're so thick-headed, it doesn't really
it doesn't really matter. I hope my insurance
Well, come on,
company's
let's go.
watching.
We got people watching.
Back to where I was going with this, we watched people when they were looking at housing inventory. All of a sudden, once you get universal internet connection,
Yeah.
Nelson's a place you want to live, eat, and play. Right? It's a fact. We got the best hikes, we got the best breweries and wineries, we got the best views. Well, all of a sudden, we became competitive in the entire United States to live.
Yeah.
That guy, when we talk about that urban ring serving that area of that urban ring, well, yeah, that person's now competitive, but also the guy in California who's working whatever coding job is now competitive to have an East Coast lifestyle. So we've seen a lot of move-ins from those directions. And some of that, I mean, obviously it's impacted our real estate massively, especially on the 151 corridor, where you also have proximity to 64. You're 30 minutes from two metropolis areas. And if you have people in Richmond live in Nelson, who work in Richmond,
Sure.
now living in Nelson County because they got that hybrid work lifestyle. So,
I want to kind of go back to internet a little bit
Sure.
later, but part of what we're starting on today's show, and you're the one that's kicking it off, is we're going to, starting in the next couple of months on Fridays, kind of bring in some local elected officials. So technically you're here as the chairperson
Right.
of Nelson
Sure.
County
Yeah.
today. So, let's talk about Nelson County from
Yeah.
a local government perspective. What's going on? How's the budget looking?
Sure.
Anything you want to share, and we'll pick it up from there.
So at this time, our budget's looking really interesting. interesting. I was talking a little bit about the transient occupancy tax revenue stream, and it's looking like Nelson County should be realizing more revenue naturally with the change of the state law enforcement, obviously. Enforcing transient occupancy tax, by and large, is not that simple. You know, it takes a lot of intimate roles and making sure people are paying their taxes. With the state changing the laws requiring that online platforms to make that contribution directly to the counties, that's definitely impacted it a lot. So I definitely see our revenue increasing at least 20 to 30% in this budget cycle, and I would imagine it has a chance, without raising the tax rate, to increase close to another 40 to 50%.
That's where I was going to go.
Yes.
Did you, this time last year, think you made a prediction that you'd be revenue neutral? Are we looking the same way?
We're going to be
again?
positive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be a positive this year. Not as massively as we would hope for until the next tax assessment, but we will be revenue positive.
Explain what that means.
Yeah.
So I know we talked last year because we had the huge debacle when everybody got their reassessments and it was 200%.
Dude, people are freaking out around here.
I know.
But you're not,
so.
in
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
So in clarity, Nelson County's not doing a reassessment.
We already did ours.
You already did
yes,
yours
everyone
last
got
year.
their in. Yes,
Was
and then we
last year,
did some
right?
equalization with that too.
Got it. So,
Yeah.
so to be clear,
Yes.
Nelson County.
We've
this
already
year-
did ours, so we got a little bit of time. I can't remember if we're on a 2 or 4 year cycle. I think it's a 4-year cycle. Might be 2, but either way, you have to kind of get started pretty quick because it takes years to get it done. So, you know, as it related to tax assessments, what happens is a lot of localities try to live off of whatever the tax assessment is. That means you're not increasing your rates because you're living off of the natural inflation of the general real estate values in your county, right? Nelson County has a very, very positive history in not having to raise real estate taxes as a result of living off of that inflation. We had a massive increase in assessments recently, so we did a lot of equalization. So we lowered our real estate tax value to help alleviate some of the burden on people. So, you know, I imagine if there are any revenue enhancements, which is a fancy word to say tax increase, you'll find out when
Revenue
local
enhancement.
revenue enhancements.
Revenue. That's like the price modification, price
Yeah.
adjustment.
I like
Remember
that.
The real estate.
You know, these are
All
most.
these, the realtors have a
Yeah.
different term for it. It's a price modification
Yes,
today.
I know, right? Yeah.
We lowered the price.
Yeah, we lowered the price.
So, anyways,
Got it wrong. Lowered the price.
I would say, you know, if we're looking
Oops,
at.
did I say that out loud? Me
That's
and
why
my,
I love you, Keith.
That,
That's
me and
right.
my inside voice.
You're on point today, Keith.
That's right. So I would tell you guys that, you know, we probably wouldn't be looking at touch. In my entire history of being on the board, I don't want to increase real estate
Yeah,
tax.
sure.
That impacts our lower income demographics, which we'll talk about the impacts of housing on them already.
Sure.
Too substantial. So if there is any conversation about revenue enhancements, it'll be on the transient population coming into our county and eating and drinking.
So you are looking at other sources other than rooftops.
Right, and we don't even necessarily even have to look at that this year. We're probably a year out before we really need to think about revenue enhancement, tax increases.
So
You guys are the best.
You're
man.
thinking like 2023.
I would say 2024 budget cycle. Yeah, that. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Okay, Judas said I should clap for Jesse right now.
Yeah.
He's exactly right. Viewers and listeners watching the program, give Jesse Rutherford some props in the comment section, and I'll relay those props live on air. If you have a question, put them in the comment section. I'll relay it live on air. I'm trying to get Todd Rath in the mix, the owner of Blue Toad Hard Cider,
Yeah.
who watches the program
Yep.
routinely. He's a big fan of yours. I may be moving the family to Nelson County.
You have to.
From Keswick to Nelson County. I mean, what he is saying is resonating with me, and
And you
it's
got internet.
Yeah,
We
he's
have
got
really great internet.
He's got breweries. He's got distilleries. He's
Got
got
mountains.
views.
It's not about the booze.
Bill,
Maybe. You know.
Bill McChesney says what everybody in this area is thinking. My friends all over Facebook are gasping right now with the Charlottesville real estate
can't
tax
imagine.
assessment increases. And
That's-
folks, you haven't even seen the tax rate yet. What's going to happen with
Yeah.
the tax rate? If that goes up, it's really going to sting.
Yeah.
Keith.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. I describe it as a three-sided triangle, right? So tax assessments on the top, bottom right is the budget.
right.
So that's the reason why I want to start having these
Sure, these
round
budget-
table
yeah.
budget conversations.
Yep.
You know, to quote Ned Galloway, you know, if you really want to know how Jesse Rutherford's going to vote, watch him during budget season.
Yeah, watch him out budget season. That's
The
true.
Budget
Yeah.
season
Yeah.
on that end of it.
Yeah.
But if I'm hearing this right, it seems like either your budget's going down, if I'm hearing that right, if you've got this So basically Airbnbs, right?
Short-term rentals. Yeah.
Short-term rentals,
Yep.
Airbnbs have not been taxed. Is that what I'm
They
saying?
have been taxed. We are working on enforcement. So when
Got
we had solicited increasing the tax, we had realized that it was not being fairly enforced. So we've doubled down our efforts, and between our efforts and the state's efforts, we've realized new hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's awesome.
So
What does double downing on the efforts mean? Just
double
checking
down-
the sites?
That's checking the sites. That's basically, one of the threats we had is, hey, if you don't have your short-term rental paid up and paid for, you're going to you might lose your right to even have it at all.
That's
Got it.
awesome.
And so what did that mean? I was talking to the
Is that an
commissioner.
SUP in your county, or is it by right?
Not agriculture.
Got it.
Everywhere else it would be special use permit,
Got it.
right? Kind of the opposite
Sorry.
of what Louisa's problems
Got
are.
it.
So when we doubled down, I mean, we had people coming to Nelson County stroking $30,000 checks because they realized they hadn't paid taxes over the last 2 years. And, we got to kill the myth now. Airbnb over the last 3-5 years has not paid your local taxes. So quit lying to yourself. And you now owe lots of money to a locality that you've been using their services.
So people think Airbnbs
They
actually...
thought that those short-term rental platforms were paying the taxes because it pays the sales tax to the state.
Do we honestly think that's what people thought? Or was
No,
it just
I
like,
definitely think there was a lot of people who were just going to ride that train
Right.
and see how long you could ride that.
don't ask for permission, ask
then-
for forgiveness later, and play dumb?
And then when we doubled down and started threatening all sorts of stuff, there's some people
Do
writing
you need
some...
something from my utility belt for that?
Oh, geez. But hopefully over the next few months, as we kind of tidy up and clean up that act.
So you're going to hire up more personnel?
We're soliciting new platforms to help with enforcement.
Got it.
It's now a big enough revenue source that we can justify, entire, platforms to run the whole system.
So you think it could be automated?
I don't know if it could be automated entirely, but it could definitely alleviate some of the tracking of ownership of short-term rentals and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So somebody asked us this on the show, I think last week.
Right.
So sounds like, in simple terms, Nelson County is probably going to be revenue neutral.
I would say revenue neutral, generally
Taxes
speaking.
are probably not going to go up.
Yep,
in
they will probably not
2023.
go up.
2024 may be different.
Right.
On that end
Yep.
of it, I was asking Dale Herring, our friend from Greene County last night, they're giving actually money back
Yeah, yep.
on that end of it. So tell me how Nelson County is able to do this and not Albemarle County
Great question. Or
Yeah.
City of Charlottesville.
or City of Charlotte.
I just
Yeah.
got hammered on
I saw that.
assessments on my desk over there.
Yeah.
13% year over year, and I don't even know what the tax rate is.
It's the reason I put my cape and belt
mean-
on, make you feel better.
Thank you, Keith.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize this, and I'm going to cut straight to the chase here. The owners of the property oftentimes are passing down these
Yeah. I mean,
increases.
it goes to the tenant.
It goes to the tenant.
There's no such thing as a tax increase on an individual who owns large assets.
Right.
It's only that always
Well-
goes from here down to
The people that it impacts
Yeah.
are the fixed income.
Financial
Right.
margin.
Right,
Yes.
correct.
Yeah.
The marginalized on the financial
if you're
side of things.
lower income, all those things, and God forbid, personal property taxes going up, or those staying the same.
Well, on the 17th, I'm going to have Chris Fairchild sit in that seat, and Moselle Booker, who's
There you
the
go.
current chair. If the crystal ball aligns and everything aligns right, I actually might be paying on my house in Fluvanna County the same cash amount as if it was in Albemarle County. And that was the first time in 30-something
be
years. Look at
insane.
that. Don't touch my...
I'm sorry.
ever
Don't touch
I
his
was
balls.
helping you.
Do not
okay?
touch my balls, okay? This is the reason...
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
I'll do my best.
Bill McChesney says Nelson County
Hold on a
sounds
second.
like America, and I responded, it sounds like heaven to me.
Yes.
The beautiful,
It is, in fact, God's country.
It's God's country. The beautiful, the talented Devin Combs watching the program.
I know.
Combs watching the program, and she says, "I'm so very proud of you, Jesse. I absolutely love you, honey."
That's so sweet.
She loves
Wow.
you. See, that's
I
his
love you too.
fiance watching the
I know,
program right
that's
now.
so sweet.
I have to pout now.
Why do you have to pout?
Mrs. Smith said, behave.
Okay.
Behave.
Okay. All right. Debbie
We'll work on that.
Donhe giving you some
Donahue.
props.
Yep.
Ginny Brazil giving you some props right now.
Excellent.
These are the tough last names today.
I know.
On Real
Let's
Talk
get some
with
harder
Keith
ones.
Side.
Yeah.
Good
There's
luck.
some Germans who've moved to Nelson, so I'm waiting for them to chime in.
I like Rutherford and Smith. I can phonetically pronounce that.
Rutherford's a tough one,
Rutherford's
it
so
took
easy.
30 years in Nelson
I
County.
like John Blair.
What?
So, no, I was just like doing the Marine Corps grunt type of thing.
Hoorah.
So talk a little bit more about
Fluvanna?
Well,
Yeah? Okay, I can do that.
Nelson County. So we got internet. Looks like our budget's balanced.
Yes.
What else is going on in Nelson County?
You know, a really similar conversation that a lot of localities are having is what are we going to do with school capital improvements? Obviously, Albemarle and Charlottesville have probably one of the largest impacts that I've ever seen and never want in my life. We have some major capital improvements that we're trying to figure out what to do with our school population.
But
You
isn't
know,
that going down though?
dramatically. So it's looking like we've lost another I'm not going to say 50, it's like 40 to 50 pupils year over year. And we've lost about...
Why is that?
You know, and I think at some point when we get to the housing topic, like I kind of want to talk about some of the workforce impacts that we're living in Nelson too.
Oh, this is your show, buddy.
So, you know, we got some interesting data combined with the Census, Virginia Employment Commission from our consultants who are helping us do our comprehensive plan. And we got data related to, and I'm going to pull it up on my phone real quick, data related to who works and lives in Nelson County. So, you know, I'm going to give the not shocking stats first. So in Nelson County, people who live and leave Nelson County every day to go to work, it's about 4,800 Nelsonians. We'll say here we nod our head.
Out of how many?
We're getting probably about 7,000. Well, okay, this is not that simple, so don't even say that yet.
I'll shut up.
So about
You said it,
4,800
not
people
me. I'm
live
just
and
sitting
leave
here.
Nelson County every day. All right, people who live and work in Nelson County, it's about 1,600 people. Here's the statistic, here's the number that's really scary, right? How many people do you guys think drive into Nelson County every day to work Nelson County jobs?
Oh.
I would not even have an idea on that.
I think it's
Do you have an
less than
idea?
1,600. It's more.
So this is where we start getting into
Well, you
housing.
got Wintergreen.
Oh yeah.
And
And,
this-
the breweries.
Yeah.
And you-
151.
Yeah, so you have about 2,100 people who drive into Nelson
Really?
County to work Nelson County jobs.
Interesting.
So when we get into talking about workforce blocks, you know, who's living and working in Nelson County, what do those numbers look like? One of the things we've learned is that the largest block in Nelson County every 10 years increases the 10 years. So in the early 2000s, I think that largest block was 39 years old to 49 years old. And then 2010, it was, you know, 49 to 59. Now we're starting to see that number get to 59 to 69. And that's not a workforce demographic at that point. It's starting to age out. So we've also come to a realization like, oh my God, we've lost our largest block of 39 to 40 now. So what does that mean? That impacts our student population. That impacts who's working the jobs in Nelson County. So essentially, we've come to this realization that we're importing a sizable amount of our blue-collar jobs, our hospitality jobs, from other counties, especially Amherst County. They're coming into Nelson and working Nelson County jobs. Now, which leads us into that. Why is that, right? And, you know, we talk about housing affordability all the time, and you know, my goodness, I joked, I said, well, if we improved wages, a lot of these folks probably would certainly want to live in Nelson, but because of the, you know, inability to infiltrate our housing market, they would probably still live in Amherst County and just have a better lifestyle.
Judah, did you load up these slides by any chance from Nelson County? If you wouldn't mind.
Oh, they're on screen already?
No.
Okay.
But if you could do slide 2, if you wouldn't mind. So what that's showing is Nelson County single-family detached, to play off of that.
Yep.
Does not, thank you, sir, does not
Sure.
include new construction, but it excludes Wintergreen. Wintergreen is
That's its own thing.
a whole
You just got to
different-
leave it to its
well,
own.
I've
Yeah.
got numbers for that.
Sure.
On that. And, but, so 2022, the median sales price was 401, to your point. By the way, outside of Wintergreen,
Yeah.
you have no attached product.
No.
Right? You have
No.
nothing that would be able to, I could pull out of my housing affordability utility belt
No.
to help that.
No, not at
I love you, Keith.
401,000.
So
I said to Yona, should I wear this? She goes,
so much.
you're such an idiot.
She didn't say that.
She said it in German. She spoke to me in German, so she said something.
Wow.
I'm pretty
Said a
sure
lot
it
of things.
wasn't romantic.
Oh, jeez.
It's funny when she. I'm gonna get
I
myself.
genuinely enjoy your
I'm
company.
gonna. It's because I'm not smart enough to do anything else. I am a realtor. Look at that.
He is a realtor. He is a realtor.
Judas laughed.
So go to
go
slide.
back to-
Go to slide number 1. Judah, let's work. Me and you, okay?
Okay, slide number 1. I'm sorry.
Slide number
you're
1.
making me laugh.
Slide number 1.
We'll get to housing.
Huh?
Nothing. Keep going. I don't,
It's a real estate
The
show.
ADD just kicked in.
It's a real
Stop it.
estate show, Keith. It's,
Stop.
it's on
Thank
screen.
you.
It's on screen.
So we're losing. So even though we're up to $401,000 in 22, we're losing volume. Number of units that are being sold. We went from 176 in 21 to 139 in 22, which, by the way, 22's matched off right spot on 218. So
Sure.
2018 was 140 units sold, for 12 months, and in 22, 139. So we've got no product coming online. We got prices going up.
going up dramatically.
Going up. We've got nothing I can pull out of my super duper utility,
Yeah.
housing affordability utility belt to help anybody. What the hell are we going to do?
Right.
What are we going to do?
It's a disaster. I mean, so I just kind of.
Excuse me to interrupt you. I just want to get this out before I forget it.
Yeah.
That stat that you just told me
Yeah.
blew my mind. We didn't have a
Oh.
pre-production meeting on this stuff. I did not understand
Yep.
that you have that many people coming to your county to work.
Yes. That is where
Wow.
we are at now in Nelson County. And I hope that data point starts getting echoed into a lot of our policy in the comp plan and zoning. But let's talk about that number. So who can afford $401,000? I mean, the salary you need is probably above the median household income
I could
already.
add context to that.
Yeah.
Da-da-da.
I know.
As the chair of the land trust,
Yeah.
we helped 23 people, affordable housing buyers, housing affordability buyers, we average 65% area medium income.
Sure.
The maximum sales price on an ownership component is about $215. That's
At
about
best.
where you got to be.
Yep.
You really should be at 200, right?
Yep.
To make that math work so that the PI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, or HOA, if you're in one, doesn't exceed like a third of your income.
Yeah.
Most of folks are doing about 50%, by the way.
Gotcha.
At that level on that stuff. So we're not even in
not even-
Nelson County. You're not even
half
You're not even
there.
halfway there.
I mean, I sit here and think all the time because I'm part of the Lynchburg area MLS car. You never see anything in the 200s anymore.
Oh,
Like-
200s are gone.
Like that number, and that was your,
Maybe Buckingham County.
Oh,
Maybe.
for sure, definitely Buckingham. I mean, hey, listen, I still say every day the answer to affordable housing lies in the land of Buckingham, because of. But at the same time, we have to look at this other piece. As we see local governments, and I have no problem saying it. We're some of the largest barrier to entry for any new housing inventory.
Amen,
in
brother.
all sorts of policy, everything else. So I got into a real big fun fight, right, with a bunch
And
of
he would know. He's a builder.
Yeah.
And he owns properties.
I
where-
own rental properties.
Yeah.
I own long-term rentals, short-term rentals. I can paint the whole picture of why markets are what they are in that regard, especially in Nelson. But guys, you look at local officials and they always say no with impacts. And the problem we run into, and this will go to my speech that I made to
Thank you.
subcommittee.
Thank you.
Essentially, when you're looking at what's happening, right? Politically, it's always the right answer to vote no. I hate to say it, and
How did that, first let's
yeah.
because I'm going to be looking at what's active in Nelson County while you're speaking.
Sure.
So Sally Hudson
Sure.
has put in a.
We should, put in perspective who she is.
Got it.
For
Yeah.
those that don't know.
Got it. So would you like to?
Yeah,
pick
sure.
up on that?
Sally Hudson, she's a Virginia state delegate. She represents Charlottesville pretty much, and maybe a piece of Albemarle.
She does.
She had a bill representing ADUs.
ADUs,
auxiliary dwelling units, which is basically saying you by right have the ability to have one in your property, barring certain impacts of, engineering like health and all that stuff. But it would remove the zoning portion of that. Now, is that a cure-all? Absolutely not. Is that a great step in a direction? Absolutely.
Well, to quote Neil Williamson, more housing for everybody. So
Yes.
it will help the inventory.
Yes.
But this is an important conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
we have folks on both sides of the aisle, right?
Ah.
You're not on the same side of the aisle as
Oh,
Sally.
no, absolutely not.
On that, and you actually went and spoke on this behalf.
Absolutely. And because at the end of the day, housing is a human need, and to kind of say something that I said there, I remind my conservative friends and colleagues all the time of the first paragraph in the Republican Creed, and it says that the free market is the best supplier of human needs. in services. Yet here you see a bunch of conservatives standing in the way of the free market to satisfy some of those needs. So, like, I want to talk about the politics of this a little bit, because
I'm
voting,
glad you're doing this.
voting no is and always will be the most popular thing you can do as an elected official. You will be seen as the brave guy. You will be seen as the one standing up for a community, standing up for the environment, standing up for the, whatever the character of a neighborhood means, for all those types of things. Because what happens is, those are the only groups that really get out and campaign for candidates, right?
Neil Williamson says all the time, how can the folks that don't live in the area, campaign for more housing?
They can't.
They can't.
They can't go to a board meeting and advocate for housing that they can afford, because they're already trying to figure out how to live in the housing that they got.
Exactly.
Well, that's why Neil has a cape on, and I have a cape on.
That's
and
right.
You have a cape on.
That's right.
And everybody who's trying to do that.
Yeah. But let me tell you about this knockdown dragout I had. So
Okay.
I had a handful of local officials once at a conference I was at, and housing came up. And I just brought it up. I was like, I think there's a lot of us in here, and they're like, well, there's a lot of impacts we need to address. And, I think we need to start saying this part now. I said, yeah, sure. Do we need to add another classroom? Do we need to add a turn lane? I said, you know what? Those impacts are going to be a lot easier to figure out than trying to figure out how we take care of a generation that's had two generations that have not had any ability to generate any equity in their life.
Well said.
That fact alone, you have to think about it. Your home, when you got it paid off, that was the thing you lived off of when you get to that point of retirement, right? You can't live, then all of a sudden start figuring out with your flat income of Social Security to survive. What are you giving to your next generation of kids? We've basically, as local officials across the state of Virginia, looked at the entire conversation and said, oh, let's do a study. I am so sick and tired of stinking studies.
God, I love this guy.
Like, you're getting to this point where, so they'll say, we know housing's an important issue, but let's go on ahead and make sure that we do another study to figure out how best to implement it. And they're going to tell you the exact same thing. Virginia Housing, all of those entities are going to say, you need more housing inventory. And so what I agreed with Sally on was taking at some point, even if it's not politically popular today, it will be a political necessity in 20 years. Local authorities are going to start losing any authority as it relates to certain housing developments, sadly. And that's the shame on the localities at that point. Because we're going to get to, 2,000 people are driving into Nelson County to work today. Now, we're obviously not getting a lot of asked to build in Nelson because topography and all sorts of other issues.
You think
However,
that's the only reason why?
no, you definitely have a cost infiltration. You have an infrastructure infiltration issue. But when you have counties like Fluvanna and Greene and the rest, when they start denying these in Albemarle, 200-300 home developments, that's our problem. And that's when I have to look at those boards and say, thank you guys for making my life more difficult.
So I'm glad that you brought that up, because
Yeah.
Ned Galloway and I are doing these road shows, and we're bringing the Regional Housing Partnership to each one of the jurisdictions. And, and generally I include in my remarks is this is a regional thing. That's the reason why the regional
You have
housing
to talk
partner-
about regionally.
Right.
Yes.
So what happens in Nelson County
Yep.
impacts Charlottesville and vice versa. And I'm going to give you a bit of a shout out, because what you have said to me once before, and I'd like you to redo it again,
Okay.
about
I'll try to.
explaining to somebody in your jurisdiction
Yeah.
that they couldn't afford there.
Yep.
But before you do that,
Yep.
I actually emailed Jerry and Judah. There's a dashboard we're working on called Hand. So it's Hand Housing, and if somebody could post that in the feed, it'd be great. And what's really neat about it, it's a picture of all folks. It has COO, accountant, preschool teacher,
Yep.
mental health counselor,
Yep.
pharmacist,
Yep.
emergency technician, healthcare aide.
Yep.
On the top, it has a dollar amount.
Yep.
And as you slide this dollar amount left to right, from zero up to an amount of money, all these people, it says
gone.
housing insecure. It just
Yep.
takes these
It's
people out.
Gone.
And it's a really great tool, because when you're having a conversation with somebody and going, okay, great, you're rejecting all these projects. I understand why, but you understand that your school teacher now can't live in your county.
Yeah. Our school teachers can't live in Nelson County. They have to drive from Amherst. I've heard stories that there have been teachers from Appomattox and Campbell County now driving to work Nelson County.
How
teacher
far is
jobs.
that?
We're talking 45 minutes. You know, a drive that you would normally think in the boonies of Nelson would be willing to drive to a Charlottesville drive are driving from a rural municipality to work another rural municipality's teachers' jobs. And, sure, is there a wage piece to be had there? Yeah, but when it's at $401,000, it's going to be really hard to figure out everyone making six figures.
Nelson County has 28 homes on the market right now, excluding Wintergreen.
Ready, yeah.
On it. 4 of them are under $200,000, and as you were speaking, I was looking at all those 4.
Yeah, they're probably.
What's the DOM? What's the DOM on those 4?
Oh, 151, 114.
Yeah.
So
They're uninhabitable.
That's what I was just going to say. You knock them down.
Those are investor infiltration love projects. Those are the only people who are going to buy those.
And I think at the price points they're asking for, it's not that. So really, you start getting into the jumps to 230 right away, 249, 250, which is at least close.
You're getting there, but that's competitive.
But
everyone's in that market.
That's exactly right.
Everyone's in that market range.
Or on the 10th unit of the 28 is when you start having a 3 and it's only 1, and then it immediately jumps to 4. Right, so your median list price right now is $629. And low is 142, but you're buying land.
Katie Pearl, the realtor, says, I love this guy. She's the queen of Whitehall. Multiple people, including Grayson and North Downtown, saying this guy is what we need in the city of Charlottesville. We've encouraged Jesse Rutherford multiple times on this program to run for state senate. Now, Keith is immediately going to say, don't make his head any bigger. That's what he's saying right now. Keith, right there.
You want my utility belt?
He's getting...
I need my fiance to chime in and say no.
Stephen Anthony is saying, love Jesse's viewpoints from a fellow Hornet. Man needs to run for state or federal office. That's literally what I just said right there. Josh Sullivan, hi, Jesse Rutherford. This is Josh from Bend, Oregon. I'm moving to Schuyler soon. Do you have any good compost suppliers in Nelson County that you can recommend? You get everything on this show here.
Compost. Did I hear that right?
He's moving from Bend. He's watching in Oregon.
I know this guy. Yeah,
you know this guy?
I've met him. I've talked to him a couple times. But, there's some good cow pastures nearby. I'm sure the farmers will contribute for free.
Mario Fallas giving you some props. This is the tough last name show here. Rodriguez Vest, Catherine, Francis, Catherine, Garcia watching the program, all giving you props. I can't even keep up with how many people are giving this man props. Your fiance says, no, no Senate, no Senate, Jesse.
Yes, I know.
Says no.
We don't have time
I love you, Devin. I can tell that you're A+ people. Michael Plecker, that's part of the problem. Only investors will purchase the lower price homes. What happened to home buyers that want to use sweat equity to make a home affordable? Who wants to touch that one?
I really want to hit on that one.
Okay.
Because that world of where bankers trusted a person
is
to
over. It's
rehabilitate a home is never coming back.
Right.
It died in, 08? Maybe
08, 09, 2010.
1808.
1808, whatever, 1808, is that when it died? We play this, we talk about, sweat equity. Like, and I do want to get to the guy that you mentioned where I told him, like, he couldn't even afford the very thing he hates.
You have to tell that story. It's a really poignant story.
When we're talking about that sweat equity, we don't live in a reality like we did in 1970. My dad built a house in the 70s with 0 building inspections that he still lives in. It would never pass any housing code today. And if he were to replicate what he did, the cost would probably be close to $750,000 because he'd have to implement what we have, right? Now, that's not to say some of those practices that we have today aren't good. Like, there's a good reason for some of them. There's definitely some bureaucracy and ridiculous stuff like...
So I've been reading... Jerry has a young person in the house. I'm old and I can't sleep, so I wake up at 2:30 and read.
I do that too, don't worry. Oh, I don't read though, I just wake up.
Well, reading's good.
Okay.
So that
I'll text you.
No, do not text me. Do not text me.
Okay.
I got to learn how to put this thing on silent. Do not text me. But I was reading a really interesting article. I think the New York Times put it out. And the question was very simple. What happened to the starter home?
What is that? I mean, it doesn't exist.
And look, we talk about turning red tape into green tape all the time. And we also know about 25% of any new construction is red tape. So if you can help that a little bit, it'll kind of get there. But one of the conversations, and you're an elected official, right? Yeah. And you talk to other elected officials all the time. If you can't do a development right now on something that can produce something at $200,000, they would do it. Developers and builders
We would love
do-
to do that
Yeah.
because the market's so there, right?
Yeah.
Not to mention there are incentives for the developer to hit that market.
Yeah. So, you know, it's just an interesting conundrum that Michael Payne said in my presentation to the city council, you know, his comment was, is you can't build yourself out of this. I disagree with that.
You have to build yourself out.
Well, it's a one component, but you can't build yourself out of it if you can't change the rule. If you
Yeah,
can't,
that's right.
if
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So anyway,
So-
God, I interrupted you.
Yeah, now I want to kind of touch on like why are things not more affordable? Well, one, we got more bodies than we've had in a long time. You know, two, we've got so much more, you know, red tape as you've just mentioned, and all those things add. You know, I remember there was a developer here in Charlottesville when we had the first housing conference thing, and he said you can't add regulations, referencing like sidewalks or whatever improvements you have to do in the city. You have to like build sidewalks on your side and the other side, or something of that nature. He says you can't add regulation and then expect things to get affordable, right? And that's just a fact. We're living this world where we've allowed so many other interest entities to monopolize and take over some of that red tape. And I would easily look at some building practices to say, and there are countless contractors that say, like, this is overbuilt. Like, you didn't need to do these things, right?
So let's paint a scenario here. Let's
Sure.
do a case study.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put you on the spot a
Ready.
little bit. Keith and Jerry get together. We figure to do something in Lovingston,
Sure.
right? We've
Yep.
got water and sewer there, and we're going to do a 500-unit project.
I don't know where.
Okay.
Sure, but yes,
well, hold
gotcha.
on a second.
Ready.
We're for the sake of a talk show.
There you go. There you go.
Right. Thank you. Thanks.
Feet's
for
on fire right now, as it usually is when Jesse's here.
It's the coffee.
It's the coffee, yeah.
So what's my chances?
I mean, you know, you got
Politically.
tons of issues politically as it relates. I mean, of course, I don't know if I think I'd love to know where you put 500. I mean, I'd sit there and I'd
Right.
say, I don't know where that would go,
Okay.
but let's just,
100.
Once you said
let's just say 50.
50. Say
Let's
50.
say it's
Right.
50. Let's
Once
play
you
it-
said 500, I'm like, where could that even go in Central Virginia at this point right here? But let's say 50.
Let's
say
go with
I was
50.
trying to be a bit facetious.
Yeah,
I got
Let's say
you.
50.
So let's just stick with 50 for a second. And I would say politically, you would have a good chance.
The problem with 50, the numbers won't work.
And that's the problem. A developer's
For
not
the
going to
developer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if you're starting to play games and try to get like trying to get housing authorities and all that, they then have to play large games with the state, federal government, and those other authorities to get enough money to make it work.
Right.
And guess what? That takes
Forever.
years.
Right.
Years
and
and,
then
years.
the market changes.
Like,
The
and then all of a
economy's different.
sudden, guess what? All of
Yeah.
a sudden, money's changed, taxes, and that grant that you were promised, pull that rug right from underneath of you. And now
And we
you
saw that during COVID, exactly what he's talking about.
did see that.
Like
and we
3
lived
different
it.
markets in a 2-year period of time during COVID.
Yeah, and they all shut down, and that's what all of a sudden we watched inventory costs go massively upwards.
Right.
And
So let me try it a different way.
Okay.
Could I get Wintergreen approved today if I wanted
you
to do?
would, wow, that would be yeah. So I've actually made a very similar statement. I said I highly doubt regulatory driven you would be able to do wintergreen
would
today
agree- I
by
would-
any standards.
I would agree with that.
That's a fact. They would never like. So today they want to do a wintergreen. They regulatory would not have been able to have done it.
I say Lake Monticello, you could not build. today.
Exactly. Those two very large housing stock places. You know, Wintergreen's is a different kind of demographic, but Monticello is a good example of that.
How many units in Wintergreen?
1,000,
Yeah,
2,000,
yeah,
something
so
like that.
about
It kinda
one-
depends how
one
you count the
quarter.
condos and all that stuff.
Let's
and
call it a quarter of Lake
something like that.
Monticello.
It's a large amount. So you wouldn't be able to do that. Like
Yeah.
you just absolutely want if you made it a political issue, absolutely it would not happen.
Yeah.
If you made local officials decide if that was going to happen or not, good luck.
Well, you're talking about you couldn't get past the federal and state.
Oh, you wouldn't
side.
get it past the federal and state side and Department of Drinking Water
Yeah,
and
sure.
I mean, it has one entrance and one exit, which wouldn't happen today either. So,
No.
you know,
But to that point,
Yeah.
it's much more. I use this example all the time. Where I live at the acres at Lake Monticello is a 150 lot subdivision. I bought the land, went through the rezoning requirements, site plan requirements, and put a bulldozer on the job in 6 months.
sure.
Unbelievable.
And that's
And Colonial
what we
Circle,
can do. Yeah.
which I want to talk about some good news about that on with my housing tool belt here.
And there's a ton of questions here.
I'm
Okay,
ready.
sorry,
Okay.
Jesse.
No,
and I-
but go ahead.
yeah.
Finish your thought.
But it took us 6 years
To get it. Yeah.
to get to the point
I-
to put a bulldozer on the truck.
Absolutely. And that's just between financing, the regulation. And that means we as developers have to be like financially fit that entire and hope the economy doesn't change too dramatically
Right.
to impact it.
So, I would lose my wife immediately if I said I get back into the development game.
Yeah,
so
no.
I will not do that.
That's
And she's watching.
And I know she's watching.
I can't represent
you
it. You
couldn't,
can't become a developer.
small to medium size firm
Yeah.
could not do that this
No, and honestly, think about to 2006, 2007 when everybody was like a developer doing 15, 20 lots. They could afford to do it. The only entities that are now able to fulfill those roles is major, like 8 to 9-digit companies.
We're talking Stanley
like
Martin. We're talking Ryan Holmes.
Like
yeah.
those guys are the only ones who can afford.
That's the reason why
the
that's-
Southern
horrid-
Development.
That's
Yeah.
the reason that 50-unit project would never
It would
work.
never happen, right? Because who's going to do that? Nobody. Like
It won't pencil
and
out.
so you're only going to get these 8, 9-digit companies coming in who are like got lots of money, who can afford to pay the 8.
I need 150 units.
and they're like, you know what? We got the $2 million to front the engineering, all this. We
Yeah.
understand and project in 8 to 10 years we'll finally start realizing some of our money. And those are the only guys who can do it. And that's not how America was built. America was built by those guys who built 2 to 3 homes a year, who developed 5 to 10 homes a year, whatever that was, and that's where most of our housing stock.
Well, the implosion, which sucked me
Changed
in.
the game.
Yeah.
Changed the game.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Absolutely
the
changed
rules
the game.
changed, financing changed, everything changed.
Question, sir.
Sam Moyer, props from him. Pam Golf, props from her. Catherine Garcia watching the program. Catherine Francis. Questions coming in from Claudia Wade, who I believe is your part-time neighbor. She says, I joined the show just recently, found it on Facebook. She loves it. How do you propose starter homes get built for a reasonable cost? And she says that she's building a small house near you, and the price has just increased, not just supplies, but labor as well, and it's far over budget what she planned. You have 3 media outlets, Legacy, watching the show as we speak right now. Supervisor Rutherford.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking about starter homes like, let's say it's the $200,000 number, right?
well, that's the math right now.
That's the math, right? Now, you can't, all right, just building costs. Let's say I have one floor plan, right? I call it the efficiency build, as also known as the Butler, right? It's got like 3 interior walls, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, 980 square feet. Like it's as efficient. The dining room, living room, kitchen, it's all right there, right? Company housing, imagine. And, with
That's the houses you build.
that's the homes that I try to build,
Okay,
but
okay.
the thing is the demographic also can't afford those, right? So those houses are still coming in at 200, 210, 250. That's without land buys. That's without any complicated well and septic.
Yeah.
And that's with generic everything, generic floors, generic trim.
Builder grade.
Yeah, like you're talking like, hey, you're not actually I'll look at a client and say, you don't really get that many options. Like you're gonna get a house, it's gonna appraise, and you know what? You make your improvements as your life goes on, right? And so, and the thing is, if that's at 210, 220, and there's no other builders other than like Clayton Homes and maybe a couple,
Liberty.
maybe in that same market. And the thing is, they're in the same boat. The demographics we were selling 4 years ago definitely will never be able to infiltrate.
So that's
that.
why the land trust is really picking
And
up
that's-
steam.
that's-
'cause
that-
we have to find money.
You have to have a controlling mechanism
Yeah.
for starter homes that controls the land,
Yeah.
that offsets the initial infrastructure cost, and basically guarantees that home is it into perpetuity
So-
essentially is always for that
Oh, yeah,
demographic?
yeah, yeah.
It's in the deed.
So,
That's the only way,
well, I'm sure there's other ways, but
barring major inventory.
it's subsidy, unfortunately. It's cash.
Yep.
Right? It's federal, local, whatever, to acquire that land.
Yep.
So to paint that scenario, we meaning the land trust, can buy that land,
Yep.
hold on to that land, and then you could put that $200,000 unit on top of the land.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden we can put somebody in a home. But if I heard you right, it's 200 plus the land.
It's 200 plus land, barring anything complicated.
Yeah, got it.
So what's that
that's-
put you at? 240, 250.
Right.
That's assuming you can find the land.
And
at
that's
that
and
price.
you're not going to find land for $10,000-$20,000. Land's going to be $50K.
Yeah.
Unless you're and really most scenarios are your uncle's got 5 acres and he's going to gift you 1.5 acres so that you could build this house.
So that's why, and thank you for being on my regional housing partnership.
So why was there not the political capital for Sally's bill then? Everything you described would seem like there would be tremendous momentum for Sally's bill.
Yeah,
And it failed.
it's.
John Blair just tweeted he wish it had not have failed.
I wish it
He
had
was
not have failed.
disappointed.
I was disappointed too. I mean, it was low lying
Second year in a
fruit,
row, by
right?
the way, in
Yeah,
fact.
Like, it's not like it was life altering. You know, we're just trying to create some level of opportunity. Like, was it answered? No. Would it probably produce 1,000 new opportunities for some kind of housing? Maybe.
Yeah.
You know, maybe. But we're going to turn around and, like, how that failed, I hate to say it's probably a little bit of politics. I mean, you got Delegate LaRock, who only speaks negative pretty much about anything that most people had to do. And all they did, and, you know, the most frustrating thing is when people vote to table something, that is like like saying bless your heart in Southern.
Yeah.
Like,
Just say no. Just vote no.
Just say no.
It took me a lot of years to figure that bless my heart thing
Bless
out.
your heart,
Voting
buddy.
to table is worse than just saying no.
Like, it's just
because the
like-
conditions change, the market changes.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, well, we know this is a big issue, but we're going to vote to table it.
Yeah,
It's like, dude, really?
It's
a
the
weasel.
proverbial.
It's like if you have some spine and vote no, you know, and if your constituency doesn't care, then just vote no. Then don't play this game. And I think some of the barriers you have there is it depends on who the speaker puts on those committees.
we
you
just
know.
kicked the can further down the road.
And well, basically all they said is they want essentially more studies to get done and hear back from housing councils who've already told them we need more inventory. You know, like, I don't know how many different ways you can cut that, but I think the biggest barrier was local governments.
So how am I-
Between
how are we
VACO
gonna-
and VML, and shout out to you guys, but you guys were a big piece of why we can't get more housing inventory. And though I understand and I appreciate my local officials' authority, and I would love to potentially be a home rule, the local governments have proven time and time again our inability to figure out the housing problem, so the state needs to step in and take the authority away.
Yeah, and part of that is the lack of institutional memory. Part of that is in a lot of jurisdictions locally, there's one-party control.
Yeah.
That's impacting things as well. Part of that is this NIMBY mentality that
Oh,
is
yeah.
significant momentum locally.
And it owns every locality. You know, like like I told you, it's always politically popular to vote no. It always will be. Like, the guy who's looking for the yes doesn't even live in the district, like you just said.
Exactly.
So voting no is really easy. Guarantees you no primary.
Well, how do you fix that, Keith? I mean, you've been in this since '87. How do you
Hold
fix
on,
that?
let me
Which
see
one?
what I got in my utility.
Which is
belt.
on the left
Yeah,
side, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
No.
This has been a common theme, right?
It's a common theme, and you know, the only thing I could come back to is, look, we're a Dillon Rule state, right? So,
The state has the authority to do this.
except for the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, they actually have a specific ordinance,
Oh, they
an
get their own
affordable
chapter.
dwelling unit ordinance for those localities. So they actually, on their own,
And they can have those.
They
yes.
can do that. Those two jurisdictions can do whatever they want,
Yep.
as long as they wrap it in the flag or the cape
Yep.
of housing affordability.
Right.
And they've had that ability since '88, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But for whatever reason, it's not happening. It's the reason why Neil spends the time that he does, you do, I do. We talk about this on the show and go in front of these elected officials in this road show that we're doing and saying, guys, come on. It takes four entities to do this: public sector, private sector, the nonprofit sector, and the people who we serve. Let's get them under a tent and figure out how to do it. Yeah. We were able to do it with the land trust because we brought all those folks together.
Right.
And just to put it in perspective about building equity, we've just last year sold our first 2 land trust units. They bought them at sub 80%. I think they were 65% AMI, lived in them for 2 years. Prices went up in 2 years. They walked out. They sold their homes. Walked in with no
Perfect.
cash. Walked out
With
with
$50K.
$50,000 cash.
Awesome.
Went up the housing ladder, and another affordable
even
housing
better.
buyer came in who was going to build that equity up.
Yep. That's a perfect story.
And the only way to do that, we were able to do that, was to bring all these entities under one room. And I actually didn't let them out of the room until we had a decision.
But
I actually
think-
believe that.
But the
It's
thing-
true.
No, I
I
know.
literally
I
would not
believe
let
it.
them out the room.
But I think really.
I had Liza sitting me, so I had the back
Wait,
dog. and I had
Liza's
my
the
cat.
dog. The I Love Seville
That's
dog
right.
over here.
But the thing is like, we need to do what you just did, not just with 2, but we need to do that on a scale of hundreds.
No, I did
a year.
23. We did 23 last year.
Yes.
But we're out. I've got.
I know. You have no more stuff.
I've
You
got no
ran
more
out of
land. Give
And
me
the
more
thing
land.
is you need I mean, gosh, I mean, what is the housing shortage here? Isn't it like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, something like that?
You know the exact number?
I don't remember.
That's roundabout.
I know we keep referencing the 2018 plan, which is like already, out of date. But the thing is,
Look, it's really simple. The buyer pool is the depth of the 20-foot
Yeah.
dot end of a pool, right, or the
That's right.
10-foot platform.
That's right.
And the inventory is the kiddie pool.
That-
And
That's
as
right.
you've indicated, wait till interest rates continue dropping. And
wanted
it's
to
going
ask
to worsen the
Jesse's thought
scenario.
on that.
Yeah.
And he's got questions coming in. This is from, is it Nelsonian? Is that?
Nelsonians. Plenty of
Nelsonian.
Nelsonians.
This is a
Skylar Rice.
Nelsonian watching Richard Averett,
Yeah.
friend of the programs, come on as a guest. He's an entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah.
Richard, I love when you watch and participate with the show. He says, Jesse Rutherford, in fact, he tagged you.
Oh, boy.
What price per square foot are you seeing for a basic home? 200 plus. I was recently told to build a home at custom home quality to expect 400 plus per
Yeah.
square foot. I actually think 400 plus is light.
I
for a
can
custom
add
especially
home.
if it's-
context to that.
Yeah,
I
so
just had
so
meetings
so
with-
he
Depends
said
on
he
that.
also says this, and then I'll throw it to both you guys. This cannot be driven by material prices alone.
No.
They are coming down now, or wages, which are not up that much in
No.
the context of trades. In any context, this makes affordable housing nearly impossible. Richard Averett, great comment.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're looking at, let's just look at floor level. What is an affordable? Like when I'm describing you builder grade, you're not getting any options. Like if you were going to spec a village of homes, like what that's going to cost you per square foot. And again, this doesn't count land cost, right? So you're coming to me with land. I mean, you're in that $150 to $180 a square foot range, right? That's low end. Like that's and if you're doing anything remotely custom, and to address some of that, I mean, the workforce situation in the building world is absolutely a disaster.
It's brutal.
It is absolutely a disaster. We are building a third the homes today in this boom that we're living than we did in 2006 and 7. And building them is taking 2 to 3 to maybe even 4 times longer than what we were able to do.
And the dirt's
then.
more expensive.
And the golly, I mean, that's not even talking about dirt yet. That's like, back then you could at least buy 5 acres and, have some level of affordability with it.
We got a
So-
viewer and listener walking into the studio right now. We like that here in downtown Charlottesville. Keith Smith, custom price per square.
Yeah, we'll talk about that here in a second. I just Googled real quick. The average age of a construction worker is 42.5.
Oh, that's really low.
42 and a half years old.
But that's probably geographic specific.
yeah, this is
Like,
nationwide.
if you get into the southwest, south side, Central Virginia world, man, that's 50, 60 years old.
So we'll leave names out of it, but I had some meetings with I have custom home builder clients, and we had some meetings yesterday, and I knew what this square footage range was going to be. But on the light side, you're at 300, but really you're approaching the $400 per square foot. That doesn't include the lot.
Nope.
That doesn't include lot improvements.
Nope.
Because the ones we're looking at needs retaining walls. These
Yeah,
probably
something's
$100,000 worth
complicated.
of.
Yep.
Yeah, just the what we call the horizontal
Yeah.
work.
Was this
is-
Northern Albemarle County?
Yes. No.
Are we talking, is the chemistry working?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus another one which you don't know about.
Okay.
But in any event, there's two. But that's where we're at the moment, and it depends on what you're picking. Do you want gold fixtures? Regular fixtures, that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. But,
But you're at that vertical construction.
Yeah.
Closer to 400 than 300.
easy, especially in, if you're looking for anything with special stuff in it. But again,
1987, I was building custom homes. $75 a square foot.
you affordable man.
Can you imagine
You
that?
affordable man.
75 bucks a square.
Yeah. I mean,
1987.
I have to advocate
And I was expensive.
I have to advocate for a little bit of the industry that I participate in, manufactured housing. I mean, at some of I watched the demographics I was selling.
You're talking modulars?
Modulars,
Okay.
double wides, and single wides.
Okay.
And, you're going to have to start seeing methods like that can scale become a more prominent option in certain areas, because the reality is there's but so many framing crews, right?
So we can get converted. We can get.
Yeah.
The words is escaping me here. We can get creative. That's it.
Yeah.
On the vertical stuff, but if we can't get the dirt,
Yeah.
we can't get the
can't get
subdivision
nothing.
approved.
There's nothing, yeah.
We can't get the infrastructure there. We can't get through all the approval processes
Yeah.
and all that kind of great stuff.
Yeah, then you can't do anything.
Then we can't do anything.
You can't even do it. So we, honestly, out the gate, you can't even do anything. So
Let's talk
God
about
forbid-
happy stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one thing we should highlight, Kevin Yancey's putting this in the feed, the mayor of Waynesboro, and a lot of comments on the feed right here. He says, you guys are talking about the trades. How about Charlottesville City Schools basically the city of Charlottesville agreeing to drop $3.5 million to buy out Albemarle County and K-Tech. Did you see that?
I saw that.
Yeah,
Kevin,
that just
thank
broke.
you. Great article.
It was a great article right
K-Tech
there.
went broke?
K-Tech was purchased by Charlottesville City.
okay.
It was a joint venture, a JV with Albemarle County. Albemarle County made the same offer, $3.5 million about 60 days ago.
Yeah.
City schools balked at it.
Yeah.
And then they duplicated the offer, bought out Albemarle County, and now K-Tech is controlled by the city of Charlottesville in totality. And the reason I point this out is because the folks that are trying to get in the trades, K-Tech doesn't even have the teachers to teach the
To teach
students
the
that want to
students
get
that
into the trades.
That's true.
That's the scenario we're at now.
Into that right now. So, I think one of the biggest lies, especially with the education of a student, especially in the trade world, is you look at it and you say, oh, become a plumber. Do you know how stinking complicated it is to become a master plumber or
Yeah.
even get journeyman?
Right.
The only, and I hate to say kids, but if you're 18 years old, you want to become a plumber, the only option that they're going to have is to get hired by some big outfit that's paying for the class, that's paying for their truck to get there, and all of that. Otherwise, if you're just some kid who lives in whatever county, you have no opportunity to drive to K-Tech every night with your Ford F-150 from 2002. Like, it's not going to happen. Look at you.
Look at my licenses.
I have these virtually now. I don't have paper.
Look at that Costanza wallet over there. Look at that George Costanza wallet he's got over
I
there.
mean, you could have at least laminated it.
I've got my vaccination card too.
Oh, God.
Keith
Stuck
just slipped Jesse Rutherford his business card over there. Is that your?
No, that's his license.
That's my
your
contractor's
Class A
license.
contractor's license
Yeah,
over
yeah.
there.
Again,
I've had
it's-
this since 80.
It's all on an
80s.
app now. So.
Really?
Yeah, you
Okay.
should upgrade.
Okay. Okay.
Be with the cool kids.
Yeah,
you know?
okay.
But anyways,
But I
back-
got a cape.
Yeah, you do have a cape. But
a
I want to go back to the topic of the trades. Like,
But you see the gas fitting license I got in there?
yeah,
Good
that's,
job.
that's how old I know you are. When you qualified for that rule in 1994. But the infiltration to those trades is
Thank
so
you, Jesse.
stinking expensive. Like, okay, it could be free, but then just the fact that you're going to make someone go 3 to 4 years of working, like, it's harder than finishing a 4-year degree now, and that's a shame.
That is a shame.
That is a.
But this may change, Jesse.
It will change. How they treated nurses and how that used to be a 4-year program, they expedited that to be an 18-week program in Lynchburg.
So the bottom line is the thing I hold in my hand, my iPhone.
Yes.
Seems like a lot of people. This is what they want to do for a living, right?
Yes,
But if we're tracking
What's
the
that?
news,
Be an influencer? Is that what it is?
He
Is
is
that what-
TikTok
no, be in
famous.
the
Did
tech
you know that?
business.
Oh,
right,
okay, gotcha.
right. So
Yeah, those
that's-
guys are. Yeah.
But those guys are getting hurt hard, right? It sounds a little familiar how we got hurt in the construction
yeah,
business. On that
yeah,
end of it.
yeah.
Who knows? They might pivot to being a plumber. I
you
doubt
know,
it, but they might pivot to be a
The
plumber.
day that comes, I'm ready. You
Yeah.
know, I'd love to see them. Putty some stuff up and
So-
put it together.
I will tell you, what do you think the number one cold call question I get from people is?
Do you got anything for rent?
No.
That's mine.
Mine is, do you know anybody who can do this? Do you know anybody who
Oh,
can
sure.
do that?
Yeah.
I need a little plumbing work
Well,
done. I need a little electrical
I mean,
work.
and if you got a guy, you never tell who they are, and
Right,
you hide
right.
them, and then you make sure you invite them to your Christmas party with none of your friends.
Dude,
Then at that point, I go, do you know I'm a real estate agent too?
the subs that I have, I'm giving them Christmas cards.
Oh, yeah.
Bottles of booze,
They're
taking them out for lunch. And to
Dinner.
Jesse's point, folks constantly are asking, "Who do you recommend for this?" I'm like,
I have
you know,
no
I have no
idea.
who idea.
You know what I do?
don't know what I can't
I
answer
point
that.
to those big businesses. Like, just call that 800
Yeah.
number.
Right.
Go figure it out from there. Contribute to their bottom line. But it's a lot. And I do want to hit one highlight where this is a good story where we talk about housing affordability and some of the NIMBYisms that you live. And I had a constituent, and this is a pretty kind of cool story, right? I had a rough day that day too. So he comes up and was complaining about, the demographic that was going to live there, crime, the typical litmus test, right? Like, we don't want those folks. And she's just like, oh my God, what isms is this man going to use over the next 5 minutes in talking? Pretty much used all of them and said, this isn't affordable, or this is what happens when affordable housing comes to an area. And I looked at him after the meeting and I said, buddy, let's play a game real quick, because you couldn't even afford to live in this place even if you wanted to.
Right.
And he was insulted. And I was glad he was. And I said, well, let's play the game. And so I walked down the salary, what he gets yearly for his yearly pension. And I showed him, 30% of your income. Do you have a car payment? Let's walk this down more.
Yeah, sure.
And I said, you are outpriced by $600 a month payment.
Well, that's what this hand tool will do for folks. But
Yeah.
thank you for telling
And
us.
the thing is you put that perspective in people's brains of saying you couldn't even afford to live here. What do you think your kid's going to do?
And is there an empathetic response?
It is no longer hostile.
Okay.
It is more just, let's talk about environmentalism now. Like, let's talk about watersheds. Let's talk about,
So they pivoted.
They got to pivot because you got to understand in the NIMBY world, you have to use whatever argument you think fits the narrative of who you're talking to in that moment, which is such a shame because then you just know. Because I'll play that game too, like with them, and like, okay, so if it's not that, let's talk about aquifers. Let's talk about the impacts of a highway. Let's talk about the history of Nelson County in that town when it used to be 3,000 people, and we always talk about the good old days. So I guess they weren't too good then. That's the big shame of it all is they're just so against it. They're going to pick whatever ism they want so that they can see it end, and they falsely use words like rural character. That is the most abused, misused, whatever catchphrase you could ever have between that and protecting the environment, right? Because when you talk about, water impacts, it's like, guys, we're not even a tenth of the agriculture society we were. And you want to talk about who uses water? Farms. They use water. Your home, it's using 100 gallons a day.
Largest impact on the Chesapeake Bay is
farm.
farm.
And so, you could play this ism thing, and at the end of the day, it's just they don't want it. And I've had one guy who just looked at me and said, I just don't want it. And I was like, that's the most honest thing.
Well, at least he's honest.
That was the most honest thing. And I said, I said, if I voted no, it's because of him. Because he was honest about why.
So Nelson County is in a good fiscal position
Yes,
right now.
we are
right? Which is
monetarily in a good position to address some of our needs.
so your schools are decreasing.
Schools are decreasing.
Enrollment
is
Enrollment is
decreasing.
thank you. Enrollment
Yeah.
is decreasing. So you can't really. If I wanted to do a project in Nelson County, that wouldn't be an argument because
It definitely, I don't see how it could.
Okay.
If they want to play, they want to hire 2 more teachers. Well, hiring 2 teachers is pretty cheap if
Yeah.
you can produce more housing stock. Maybe the teacher can finally live in Nelson if it lives there, if it happens.
But to this conversation you had with this gentleman, right? Eventually, Nelson, because at $401,000, eventually my taxes are going to go up, right? 'Cause
Sure.
the value of
Oh,
everything
absolutely. We're
is
in
going to
4
go
years.
up.
Could you imagine?
So how can I stay? This gentleman, how is he going to stay to live there without offsetting it with something else? So
Yeah.
wrap it around a little bit differently. How much of your tax base, you may not know this number off the top of your head, is to rooftops? Because you actually have.
Yeah.
You actually,
Substantial, right?
It's pretty substantial.
Yeah,
It's like
Fluvanna's 90 plus, right?
Yeah,
Million?
we're like
92%, I believe, of
It's
Fluvanna.
it's north of
90,
90. I
okay.
can't remember.
I think it's
but
92%.
that's a pretty similar story for us as well. I mean,
Yeah.
we're in that, I think 70% or more.
Well, 70% is good.
Yeah, because we
Because
get
of wintergreen.
and-
Isn't that why?
Well, yes, absolutely. Because of the wintergreen housing inventory, I mean, you're getting 62 cents 100 on $1 million house.
Exactly.
That has no kids.
And these are wealthy
Yeah.
folks with second homes that aren't
No.
really taxing
But that's
infrastructure.
technically a rooftop. I'm talking because you got 151. You've got a lot of business
Oh,
taxes.
yeah. Well, we don't really tax businesses. We have a $35 fee a year.
Yeah.
And we don't have a gross receipts tax, and I stand with my original platform in 2017. There will be no gross receipts tax in Nelson County.
Corbin Snow, friend of the program, Snow's Garden Center, opened up a wedding venue in Nelson County.
Mm-hmm.
Nelson County rolled out the red carpet for him, he said. It's like it was easy peasy. And he put it in comparison to what? Running the family business in Almaro, and it was completely different.
Yeah. Gross
You know,
receipts tax is the biggest theft thing that you could ever experience.
The thing I have the biggest problem with that, what he's talking about, is it's done at the beginning of the year based on forecasting for the rest of the year at the
Oh.
time of the year when revenue is the tightest
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's January, February when things are slow.
Yeah, it should be-
That's my
Well,
problem with
It
it.
should be, well,
And-
Quarterly or at the end of the year or something.
mid-year or something.
Yeah, mid-year.
Something.
Well,
You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, totally.
and then they don't take any account normally for expenses, right? It's just all your gross stuff. So
Right.
if your cost
So-
of goods was 5.2 million and you only did $5 million worth of revenue.
And it's a lump sum payment.
I'm
Big
going to
old
ask you
shit.
a question that's been perplexing me, and
Ready.
I'm probably going to get myself into a little bit of
Uh-oh.
trouble, which I have not done yet today.
No,
So it's
We still have time.
We have time to get in
well, I'm
trouble.
looking at the time. I got to hurry up and get it in.
Yeah.
So we have 3 rules on the show, right? No divisive politics, no pointing
Sure.
fingers, and having fun, right?
Sure.
So what I'm about to say doesn't violate what I'm perplexed with.
I hate those rules.
What I'm perplexed with. I know you hate the rules. I needed to remind you of the rules before I asked the question.
Okay, fine. I will not behave.
What I'm perplexed because I've been doing this for 3.5 decades.
Lee Gordon has given Jesse props and saying thanks for all you do for our county. Sorry, Keith.
So, back in the day,
Right.
the folks that showed up to oppose projects
Sure.
were generally on the left side.
I know, right? I know.
And today, the
It's
people
not.
that show up
the
development
right
is the
side.
right side,
It's so-
which I don't understand.
Trust me.
Explain
You're
that.
saying conservatives are opposing the
Conservatives
pro-
are now
yeah.
one of the larger demographics that are opposing
I don't
new
get it.
thing. Right, and it's
Well, these
fun-
are supposedly property right.
property rights. What does that
Okay.
mean anymore? You can bring that up to someone, and then I say, okay, so you don't actually mean that, so quit saying it. Like you're not like a purist. You're,
hypocrisy.
You're a property. Like it's like a really cool word that you like to say in a political speech.
Property rights when it applies to them.
Yes, and whatever. Like, I knew a guy who was pro Second Amendment, diehard, ran for public office, owns a house in Nelson County, and then complained that his neighbors were shooting guns in their yard. And I sat there. I was like, "Oh my God! Please go back to Charlottesville or somewhere else." Like, it's,
I don't-
hunting season's going to be really hard.
I've asked you a question that I know you couldn't answer, but I don't understand.
Let me nail it. So my father, who obviously was a developer and lived that too, he's like, yeah, your biggest group that you always fought was typically those on the left end of the spectrum. And he's like, I'm now looking at the very people who would stand there and advocate for something that I was doing, now use the exact same, almost to the T, litmus test
of what they used
of
to
what
use.
they used to use, and they don't want to admit that that's what they're doing. My dad's like, too bad we didn't record enough stuff back in those days so that we could just rehearse what those people were saying.
So,
What do you attribute that to, though?
Populism. I think.
You think?
I think that's what it is. I think it was a populist shift that when they realized that their narrative wasn't winning enough local offices, that they're like, because people like saying something that the crowd wants to hear, right? Ultimately. Now, how they vote might be different. Generally, they vote that way also. But I think that's what happened.
So I think what's going on, my personal opinion, for
Yeah.
what it's worth, and I'm kind of involved in it on a national level. The folks that lean to my left a little bit, of my friends that lean to the left, tend to be a little younger,
Sure.
right? Is that a fair statement?
I think generally speaking.
That's fair.
That's
Generally speaking. And when I have conversations with the folks at that side of it, it's really getting into more of a generational split than it is a political ideology
That's probably
split.
true.
And they're like, I don't know where I'm going to live.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I have
With their 6 figures of student debt and
my
whatever
daughter
other
and my
problems.
son-in-law are moving from Seattle to Richmond, and we're helping them buy there, and it's a struggle.
Yeah.
And he's a doctor, just leave it at that. And we're a struggle to find something that fits in it, and what we're doing is we're losing deals to somebody that looks like me for cash.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I think what we really got going on,
Yeah.
it could be a generational thing or
Well,
an age thing.
you do run into that with politics too, just on other issues, right? So an older generation always typically looks at a younger generation. They apply exactly how they grew up and
Sure.
the environment they were in, and they can't comprehend why they can't do the same thing, right? And
I by default, because of my age, I go there.
right, and
I get it.
that's a generous thing. We deal with that. We've dealt with it back in the early 2000s on the topic of health insurance, healthcare, and all that, and so many other different issues. So it's definitely, and if it's not a problem for you, you don't care, right? And you vote like you don't care. Typically, people vote in their interests.
So to Jerry's point,
Yeah.
the people that are, let's say, younger, let's
Sure.
keep politics out of it,
Sure.
are generally working, taking care of kids,
Student
can't
debt.
show up
Yep.
to the meeting.
Or they don't live here.
Or they don't.
Or they
even-
don't live here.
Yeah.
The other side tend to be more my age.
Yep.
Retired.
They got
wealthy.
5-10 acres. They worked their
Freedom.
whole life
Yeah.
for what they got, and they should. God bless them for that.
Yeah, no.
Like,
that's-
but at the
it's a
same
beautiful
time,
thing.
is like they don't have.
I
And
just.
the politics are going to line up in 10, 15 years.
I'm
There's
not.
no doubt.
I'm not pointing fingers because that's one of our rules, right? But
Try not.
it's just perplexed me that I remember because I used to stand in these podiums
Yeah.
and used to
Make
get
your
slings
safe
and
speeches.
arrows at me at very left-leaning side of things, and then all of a sudden
It's now
now
the
I'm
right
standing at a
side.
podium and it's my right-leaning folks, and I just don't understand it.
Well, and I've really hated seeing the philosophy of property rights then get changed. Like, oh, so that's not what we meant back then, and such. It is.
I knew you didn't have an answer.
Well, how do you okay, Jesse, help me understand this. How do you handle this scenario? The political cap, okay, take a supervisor. A supervisor in Nelson and Albemarle County is voted in by a district.
Sure.
Albemarle County's got 6 supervisors.
Yep.
If the supervisor's district, the constituents the supervisor is representing, does not want increased density or more development or more housing, is the supervisor supposed to vote according to his constituents or her constituents? Or is the supervisor supposed to buck the trend of what the constituents want in their district?
So
how do you handle that?
All right, and this is a very, very bold statement you're going to get out of me.
Okay.
And it should be that you vote to the best of your knowledge for the best of your constituency and what they need, right? And at the end of the day, you should be willing, especially because, I, of course, campaigned on affordable housing because I understand that niche intimately. And I think supervisors need to start voting like they're going to go out of office the next year, right? Because if we start actually legislating that way and start governing that way, then at least you had some level of a spine, My goodness.
So to re-ask the question that Jerry asked.
Yeah.
So if I represent District A,
Sure.
do
Yep.
I vote based on
No.
my
You should vote for what the needs are.
for the whole county or just my district?
You should certainly vote for your district first and then
Okay.
county second. But at the same time, bucking the trend of what some of these looking at the isms that those interest groups are going to use, and you're using those as a justifying means, and then behind the door say, no, I don't believe that at all, you're spineless, right? You should not be on a board that sits there and says,
Well-
I was bullied into voting this way.
Yeah,
Because the supervisors are voting, at least say in Albemarle,
Yeah.
they're voting according to what the districts want.
And that's
the districts
and I
right now
believe
don't
that.
want this.
Absolutely. And so, you know what? They're getting elected with that basis. And that's, you know what? That's what's going to happen. And that's why I said eventually, because politically it's always popular to vote no, eventually the state's going to take the authority away from them to resolve the issue.
Well, how's that going to go over?
You know what? They did it on many other things in the last 100 years. And it will happen. For example, as it related to school systems and being built. Schools don't necessarily need to have a rezoning hearing. They get to be built.
Yeah, so it's Jerry brings up an interesting point, and it's you sit behind the dais, right? So
Oh, sure.
you sit behind the dais. It's really hard to understand this
Yep.
to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, it's the bravest coming together.
Charlottesville's bravest.
Bravest,
You
eh?
taught me that. You taught me that.
Bravest.
You're on fire, man.
Well done,
I did that. I saved that.
How do you know that wasn't a rescue squad to come together?
You're having a heart attack, man.
There you go. Look, so
Sure.
anybody who sits in that seat
Yes.
that is, raised their hand up for
Said their oath.
how much dollars you make a year?
I get
What do you make at Nelson?
$600 a month.
How much?
$600
Oh,
a
good
month.
for you.
Yeah. It's really high dollars.
That's kind of like my VA.
Plus health insurance?
Yes. Yeah.
It's
Yep.
kind of like my VA disability payment. Like
The
that.
Nelson County Board of Supervisors earn $7,200 a year.
Ish. Yeah. Something like that.
Wow.
I think it's turns out to be like $6K after everything.
You don't get into local office to make money.
No.
Yeah.
No.
$7,200
No. It costs you because you
A friend of the
lost time.
program said, because I'm interested in doing it. Friend of the program, who developer, it's got ties to Gordonsville. He said to me, this is the anti-entrepreneur
Oh yeah.
getting into local office. So I mean,
And let me ask this question. What we want to wrap up?
no.
No,
This is good. I love this show.
So, how often do you want to make a decision to do something that staff holds you up? Is that a regular thing? in
So
your county?
I also talk about that in kind of government. There's 3 parts of government.
Yeah.
There's what you think on the board. There's what the guy on the other side of the board that disagrees with you thinks.
Sure.
And then there's what staff kind of is bought in, right? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to have to perform. And there are definitely times where you can have a board that votes on something that's not performable. Turns out, that's not an option, whether that was legally, pragmatically, staff limitations, etc. But you can definitely be held up on that level sometimes, depending on. We don't experience that in Nelson. I've definitely seen it in other counties where staff would put their political leanings into a situation and delay.
Well, it's not even that.
Yeah.
I mean, Ned Galloway said this publicly, so I'm not speaking out of turn.
Yeah.
Albemarle County developer incentives. What these are incentives that's supposed to help developers build in Albemarle County to their affordable housing plan. We're over 2 years,
Yeah.
and there was a meeting on Wednesday that in the agenda it said we're going to talk about affordable housing incentives. I showed up early,
Sure,
going, "Hey,
yeah.
this is going to be
This is
great. We're going to talk
exciting."
about it." And it was
Nobody
one
came.
thing.
Oh.
No, it was one item.
Yeah.
Right, and
Then
it
you
was
started taking pictures of your socks. Did you see that? Yeah, it was good. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And you were comparing them to Neil Williamson's socks. It was great.
That's amazing.
I was on one side of the aisle, he was on the other side. I would look at each other and start taking pictures of each other's socks because we were sitting there trying to get some knowledge, and it didn't. But Ned was visibly frustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was frustrated that the county approved something, and the point I'm trying to make is sometimes bureaucracy, let's call it that.
It is that. Yep.
Why are we 2 years into this? And the incentive program really shouldn't be that difficult.
No, it should
You
not.
and I and Jerry can spitball
Yep.
what it's going to be
Yep.
and get 6 bullet points on it
Yep.
and
Yep.
get there.
And
A
then,
lot of stuff coming in. Todd Rath is watching. Thank you, Todd. I was hoping you'd watch today.
Thank
He
you,
owns
Todd.
Blue Toad Hard Cider.
Oh, yeah. And
Also
rodeos.
an investor. Yeah, he's fantastic. He says, Jesse, when will Nelson County finally have a comprehensive plan so investors like myself stop shooting in the dark?
well, so, okay, if you're making decisions based on a county's comprehensive plan and not the politics of the board at that time, like, be careful. Like, because you could still get a no even if it matches the
We've
comprehensive
seen that.
plan. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, and the comprehensive plan needs to be done because philosophically we don't need to be reading stuff from the 90s and the early 2000s. It'll be done hopefully this year. That's my goal as chair. I'm pushing to.
So it's a non-obligatory document.
It is not obligatory, and
It's a guide.
and when you come and recite sentences out of it, you're like, yeah, okay, I didn't agree. I was one of the 2 people when we were writing that didn't agree with that sentence, and I'm not obligated. Where entrepreneurs should be very interested is when Nelson County and other localities start looking at zoning and definitions. That's when investors and entrepreneurs should be interested.
That's happening in Charlottesville City right now.
Yes.
In Albemarle County, you watch
Yep.
the budget,
Yep.
watch how your elected officials vote for money,
Yep.
and watch how they go ahead and work on their zoning text amendments. Those are those 2 big things
Yep.
to go ahead and
that's-
take a look at.
And zoning is going to be the big piece. So really, the comprehensive plan is cool. Glad to get it done. It's zoning is what I'm excited about.
I can tell you, I've tried over decades. I've worked on getting multiple projects approved, and for myself and folks, 9 times out of 10, comp plan had not a damn thing to do with it.
No, it has nothing to do with it. It's all, and then half of it comes down to the individual board members.
It came to coffees with individual board
Yep.
members.
Yep. And
Carol Thorpe, Queen of Jack Jewett,
Hey, Carol.
Keith and Jesse. The city of Charlottesville has been governed by Democrat majority rule for the last 5 decades. If they are so pro-affordable housing and they proclaim that they want affordable housing, let's see, have control. I don't understand this question completely. She's basically alluding to Dillon Rule here. How do we explain their lack of political will and action? Is it directly attributed to a Dillon Rule state and the fact that the jurisdiction does not have the autonomy to make
let's be
moves?
honest real quick, though. Charlottesville just now got politically stable, essentially, relatively speaking.
That's fair.
So, like, their council is just now finally getting past, like, 4 or 5 years of a lot of stuff, in a way. So, like, I'm not saying some of those things can monopolize a lot of time, but they do, unfortunately. So I would give that a piece, but you don't.
No. Just so Carol, so you know, if you can look it up, it's 15.2-2304 affordable housing dwelling units.
I knew that.
On this, I'm sure you did. In certain localities, Charlottesville actually, if the board or the council makes a decision to do something, it has the authority to do it on its own. It doesn't have to be controlled by the Dillon Rule. It's only a few
cities
jurisdictions.
have a little bit of that authority.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the city of Alexandria, Charlottesville, Fairfax, and Albemarle County, and Loudoun. So those are the only
Okay.
ones that are allowed to do that. You know, I had a conversation with Michael Payne yesterday, and you know, I think this is a matter of education, right, and a matter of trying to help them understand what tools they have in their toolbox to go in and help. All I can say is I'm going to be doing it. I'm going to be wearing my cape
Your really cool
and
cape and
my
really cool
utility
belt. Yeah.
my utility belt,
Good job.
and keep on pushing this rock uphill because it's one of the right. We talked about this before the show. It's one of the three.
Make sure you
Essentials.
get this quote right.
I know, thank you. I actually
3 essentials.
right. Smith will screw it up.
No, don't mess us up.
I will screw it up. It's part of the three. What's required? Now you've got
Writing
me
it
all
down
off.
now.
Thank you,
Sorry.
freaking Miller. Right, right. Write this down.
got you.
The three essentials required to do a trip around the sun?
Okay.
Right? Food, shelter, and housing. So housing is important.
Yep.
It's our why that we get up and night dress in stupid costumes to do this stuff every day. But yeah, man, we just got to keep on pushing the rock uphill.
Todd says the zoning in Nelson is a mess.
Yes.
All A1 from the 1970s, and we all
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
Then you got more. I mean, guys, we're going to do our best to get to as many of these as possible. Michael, is it Heavener?
Hebner, yeah.
Would you think that the citizens in general just do not understand the nuances of this housing issue?
Most constituents don't, and that's why people need to get elected to help figure some of those things out and hear from the experts and all that, and obviously get the public input on what they think. I mean, you run into that in so many different, like, most people wouldn't understand the nuances of, like, wastewater treatment facility and the bureaucracy around it, right? But it's going to be very easy for a constituent to sit there and say, no, blah, 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 wasting money, you can't do that, when in fact we have like 10 DEQ violations that we got to address, and yes, it stinks that we have to build it. So, like, that's kind of, yeah, that's the purpose of
So
us.
that gentleman did a much better job than I did.
Yeah.
It's about education.
Yeah.
And it's about educating the elected officials
Yes.
so they have
they can talk to their constituents.
well, no, so they can make the right
Yeah.
what I feel is the right vote on it, to go ahead and do it. And I find that it takes a lot of time to do it, and they have to trust you, right?
Yep.
Like if I come and talk to you, you've got to trust me that I'm not having some secret
Oh,
agenda
sure.
to
Yeah.
go ahead and do that. I'm really trying to help a housing affordability on it.
Yep.
But it comes out because they you know this, when you sit at that dais and you have person after person after person saying no,
Yep, yep.
it's pretty hard to say yes.
Yeah, but and I totally get that, and there's something to be said when you do vote against what those folks are saying, and you're right, you're totally right. It's really hard to vote yes. To walk through that gauntlet and look them in their eye and say, let's talk. Or before you even vote, you have those conversations, because at the end of the day, I'm always pretty proud that in Nelson County, I'll meet with just about everybody. There's a plethora of places we can have a beverage and talk about it and know it's not a hostile place where we're coming from. And in small localities, we have the ability to do that.
So
You'll
I-
see them from time to time at the Barrel House.
Yes.
Jesse Rutherford.
And a couple, which hat am I wearing today?
I-
Devil's Back Fence.
Oh, Devil's Back.
And Woodridge mostly.
I got to tell you, my first half of the '80s, I was in places in the world where people were actively trying to kill me.
Yeah.
I'd never been so concerned for my safety as getting something approved and then having to walk
the gauntlet.
the gauntlet on that. And I have a story about that which I cannot tell on air
I
because it
gotcha.
involves some 4-letter words. But
Gotcha. Awesome.
But I had somebody jump up in the middle of a presentation and used a 4-letter word against myself, and I responded to it right on the spot, and I ended up getting the award. And on the way out, I singled out the gentleman, and I walked up to him and said, "Thank you for your help." And everybody got mad at him, and I beat-feeded it out of there
Yeah.
before they got me. But that's a scary thing to do.
Deborah Peterson Rose, hello and welcome to the show. Todd says, Jesse, you are doing a damn good job.
Yeah.
We are one supervisor away from awesome in Nelson County. That's from Todd Rath right there. Why don't we do some closing thoughts, gentlemen?
Sure.
An hour and 30 minutes flies by when Rutherford and Smith are on set. This was a fantastic program. Anywhere you want to go, Jesse Rutherford.
Guys, I think as we look into the future of housing, it might not get addressed well in the next we're in this great phase where we're finally talking about, we're getting data, we're talking about defining affordable and starter homes. We're probably politically away 10 years for local electeds to finally start getting elected based on their votes related to affordable housing, right? And if that doesn't happen, you'll just see a reality where the state government or the Commonwealth is going to be stepping in and taking that authority away. And that's going to be very ugly, very nasty. But look at it like this. Treat it kind of like internet. Everybody didn't want to address internet for a long time. And it's been critical for a very long time, too.
And then all of a sudden?
And then all of a sudden, all the politics had to line up and everyone was getting elected on that basis.
But what did it take to really?
Billions of dollars.
Well, it also took a little thing called COVID.
Yes.
And then that
Yes.
it just ratcheted it
Not
up.
for Nelson, because we were already ahead of the curve, so we didn't need
You
that.
know,
We
Al
took the
Gore
money.
and Jesse. Al Gore invented the internet. You
Jesse,
invented-
I perfected it. It's a little bit faster in Nelson County for what I hear.
Keith's got some closing thoughts. Before we do, this puts it in perspective. In the city of Charlottesville, Bill McChesney, he and his wife are retired on a fixed budget. I just got my tax bill, 13.82% in the city on my house. The increase since 2021 is over 24%. That's tough on a fixed income for our family.
Well, and it's going to get worse for Bill because the city of Charlottesville is not going to be having the same budget surplus.
I mean, they just spent $3.5 million to buy K-Tech.
Yeah. Well,
They
we
can't-
don't
they
know where
can't-
that money came from. It could have.
My point, I mean, I'll throw it
Yeah.
to you for some closing thoughts here. They can't afford to pay bus drivers
Yeah.
to get kids to school on time, yet they found $3.5 million
Yeah.
to buy a school that they were in a joint venture in with Almar.
I got to dig into that a little more. That may have came from federal money. It may have been a pass through. I don't know where that money came from. It may not have came from the general fund. But I get what you're saying on that.
The perception.
The perception of it. But, you know, Bill's not in a good spot. My mother and father are not in a good spot, right? Because Fluvanna County's budget, I'm pretty sure, is either going to stay flat or go up.
Right.
Right? And even if the tax rate stays equal, their dollar out of their pocket is going to go up.
And then they're living potentially in your basement. We love you, Tina and Pop. Lenny, you're good people.
No. I'm living in the basement.
You're living in the
My
basement.
mother- She's already made that clear. Look, Jesse,
Yeah.
thank you. It's
Thank
always
you.
a lot
Jesse,
of
you're
fun.
great.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
I couldn't have thought of a better first guest to start off our political
Absolutely.
roundtables where we're going to be talking about it. So for the next several Fridays, for the next couple of months, we're going to be having other local elected
Wonderful.
officials.
Glad to
You're
hear
going to
it.
be helping me out with maybe some state officials
yeah.
on that. So we'll have this conversation and ask the tough questions. But more importantly, the viewers and the listeners will be able to ask you guys questions.
Yes.
That's what this is really about.
That's most critical.
What this is
Yep.
about.
Nelson County, you guys are lucky to have Jesse Rutherford, and I'll put it that way, and very simply, you're lucky to have him. Judah Woodcower is the director. Keith Smith puts this program together. It's Real Talk with Keith Smith, which you can find online at realtalkwithkeithsmith.com. Go to the website, realtalkwithkeithsmith.com, if you want a lot of data when it comes to real estate locally in the Central Virginia region. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure.
And what do I do for a living?
You're a realtor. Yeah.
There you go.
So if you need to buy or sell a house, call Keith Smith, guys. High character guy. He is a realtor. J-Dubs, good work. That's the show.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
guys.
kindly for joining us on a Friday.
Awesome.
Take care, everybody.
Happy weekend, everybody.
Be happy.
That show's on fire. Who's going to tell us when the mics are off, gentlemen? 1 second.
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, just.